because I'm a really big South Carolina Gamecocks fan, and they started instituting the catapult system with
Mm-hmm.
their players during
Mm-hmm.
football. And I remember Muschamp talking about it a few times. He said, well, he got to his target distance today, and we just shut him down because if he goes any further, we may have a soft tissue injury issue that's going on. And I think for some people, it's really hard to fathom the fact that you would just shut one of your best players down in the middle of practice, be like, you're done, because
Mm-hmm.
we cannot afford to get you hurt. And so if somebody's listening to this and they have this come to Jesus moment with this, that, maybe there is something to this, where would you recommend they start?
I'm going to send you my most recent football article, and there's 7 articles linked at the bottom of that article. That's a good place to start. Brad Dixon, matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but Brad just opened up his, he has a tri-state
Yes.
clinic
Yeah,
or
the
something,
clinic. Yeah,
but he couldn't do
virtual.
it this year. So he's
Yeah.
doing it all virtual. And I think there's 15 coaches, and I have one of the webinars that's on
great.
there. You could maybe link that, and
Sure.
that I think he only charges like $40 or something, and
Yeah,
you get like
just super
15 hours of good
Yeah.
instruction from. And I think high school coaches learn so much better from high school coaches.
Mhm.
I just think it's a great. I mean, I love what he does. So anyway, that would be a great place to go. The other thing is the Track Football Consortium, which is groundbreaking stuff where we bring together S&C coaches, track coaches, and football coaches. We share high performance, out of the box. I call it rebel talent thinking. People that are willing to be different and willing to be wrong and will admit to you when they're wrong. And our people that we bring in are very accessible. We have, I don't know if you've heard of, have you heard of Steve Jones? He's one of our guys and very good friend of mine. Kimberly, Wisconsin, a big school in Wisconsin. They won 70 games in a row.
Whoa.
That's 5 consecutive 14-game seasons.
Yeah.
And his record as a head coach, 112-7.
Ooh.
Okay. And Steve Jones, if you had him on, he doesn't really want to talk about offensive schemes and defensive schemes. He wants to talk about leadership and love and mental toughness and the things that he feels are the most important things. So anyway, those are the type of people we bring in to the Track Football Consortium. And I would say we really love to bring in people that are low volume, high quality. If you say, what do you want, racehorses or workhorses? They'll say racehorses, of course. Do you want to do it like everybody else? No, I think I would rather do it differently, and so it's just a whole new way of thinking. And yeah, I've surrounded myself with people that are willing to think differently, and I think it really makes a difference.
Evolution is mandatory, right? I mean, you have
Yeah.
to evolve. You can't keep doing the same things. You have to be creative with what you're doing, if for no other reason to know what works and what doesn't work, so that you don't continue to make mistakes. I want to ask you a couple of questions about the TFC, but I want to ask you one pertinent football question that piqued my interest as we were talking, and I'll apologize because it's not on our preconceived script, but do you think players in high school football should go play both sides of the football?
I think if you need them to win,
If you need them to win.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
It's and see, that's one of the hard things. I think you should, your goal, I mean, going back to Brad Dixon coaches at a school with 265 kids, which makes him a hero of mine. I tried to get him to come to Plainfield North, and he's like, why would I want to do that? I love my school. I love my little town, and so you would think that if anybody has to play people both ways, it's going to be at Camp Point Central,
right?
A school of 265 kids. But he really, really believes that you develop more players by playing people one way. And so that's his goal. Now, I have a feeling like if the game's on the line, he's going to have his best athletes in the game. Okay. So it's kind of like when I was, most of my time in football was being a head freshman coach or head sophomore coach. And what our goal always was is to start the game with 22 starters. And the idea that our goal is still to win the damn game, though. We will sub as needed. But what I wanted to mention about two-way players is that with a feed the cats approach, how would you change that if guys were playing both ways? I get the question. I've gotten that question 100 times. And what I say is, you don't change it at all. They go, well, but you're doubling the playing time. So they need more work. See, that's the intuitive way of thinking. Like if you're playing 10 minutes of high school football, which still doesn't sound like too much to me, instead of 5, you need to do twice the conditioning. And I say, no, they need freshness more than anybody. They need a full tank of gas on Fridays. They need speed and power. And because they're such good players, that's why they're playing both ways. They're such good players. Somehow we find a way to excel when we're tired. My track kids never run more than a 200 in practice, ever. And we're still great in the 400. And to most people, that's like, no, wait, how could that? You're not ever trained. And I tell them, I said, the last 100 meters to my guys will suck. It will really suck. I mean, it's just awful.
Yeah.
But they're fast and they're competitive and they're talented. Now, if you have a guy that's trained 3 times harder than my guys, the last 100 will suck for them too. And anybody that's ever run the 400 understands that. It will really be hard no matter what your training is. But I want things to be hard, but to be the fastest, most powerful athlete going into those situations, because they're going to be highly competitive. And I just think you can trust kids in football to be good in the fourth quarter, even if they're playing both ways.
I agree 100%. Don't disagree with that at all. And I think sometimes getting past the coach is difficult, but it's also, like you said, getting your player to buy into the fact that you're going to have to sit out a few reps because you're going to need that gas in your tank. You have to, you can't play 162 plays in a football game and expect to be as good as you want to be. You wrote this article, you waited till after you retired. I get it. Yeah. But you started the TFC, right? You went out on a limb and said, people need to know about this. People need to hear about it. When did that moment occur for you that you said, you know what, guys, we're doing this. It's about evolving track, football, coaches, athletes, people. When was it that happened for you?
Well, it's interesting. I think I spoke at my first track clinic 21 years, I guess it was 21 years ago. And, or 22 years ago. That's actually the year before I started feeding the cats. It was my first time. I spoke to about 23 track coaches. And I think deep down, I'm just a teacher, and I love being in front of people that want to learn. It's totally awesome. I mean, I just love that. And a classroom full of coaches, in my opinion, is better than any classroom at the high school level I've ever been in front of. I mean, I taught honors chemistry for the last 13 years, and those kids are highly motivated 15-year-olds, but they're still 15-year-olds in high school, You had to work really hard at getting them to like it. But the coaches are really eager learners, and I just love that. And so I would get asked a couple times a year to speak at a clinic, and it was like my favorite couple weekends. And I met this guy named Chris Corfist. And if you haven't, Chris Corfist he's a worldwide legend. Yeah. And he is, I met him 11 years ago, I think. And we have breakfast once a month, and we're in contact every day. And he and I are not the same, but we're really good for each other. And so we were having breakfast one day, and I said, "Where are you speaking this winter?" And he goes, "Nowhere." I go, "That's unbelievable." I mean, he goes, "Yeah, like when you speak at like Indiana's clinic, they don't think they can have you back for like the next 2 decades because you've already spoke there.
Right.
And I go, yeah, but you're like one of the best voices. And he goes, where are you speaking? I go, nowhere. Same thing. And he goes, we should start our own clinic. And so within 15 minutes, we had hatched this plan that it should be not just track, but track and football. 6 or 7 years ago, Chris started bringing this guy named Douglas Heel from Cape Town, South Africa, a kinesiologist, to Chicago. This guy's mind-blowing. I wrote like 8 articles about him. I spent about 100 hours with Douglas. And basically, it's a manual therapy. Being a doctor, you'll think this is all voodoo shit, but and you'll be 100% correct, but it's mind-blowing. So we were into this thing called Be Activated.
Yeah.
So we called our first one the Track Football Activation Consortium. And then we dropped the activation thing, and now it's just TFC, Track Football Consortium. We've run 11 of them. We went to Tampa to do one in Dallas, one in the St. Louis area. But what's weird about the activation thing is 3 years ago, they changed it from calling it activation to Reflexive Performance Reset.
Yeah, RPR.
RPR. It's hard to talk. I don't think I could talk to any college football or track program that's not doing RPR or is interested in RPR. It's really taken the world by storm. Kids are faster, more durable, and it reboots the brain and the central core of its belly breathing. So it's not really as voodoo as it seems. Between Feed the Cats, Track Football Consortium, and Reflexive Performance Reset, those are just 3 things that it's just kind of happened to me in the last 6 years, and it's crazy stuff. So it's between me and Chris, and our first one, we did it right. We didn't pay for the venue. We just had it at a high school. I think 60 coaches came. Before you know it, Carl Lewis is speaking a couple years later. Stuart McMillan spoke. I mean, we've had really, really good people. Brian Kula, McCaffrey's trainer, spoke at 2 of ours last winter. So it's the most unique clinic a football coach would ever go to, and it's highly recommended.
Coach, what do you get more satisfaction out of, the fact that it works, or the fact that anybody can apply it and it works?
I love that question. When you talk about applying it, I feel like what I am teaching, and I can teach effectively, is a way to cook. Now, every coach wants the recipe. We're just kind of hardwired, like, tell me exactly what to do on Mondays and Tuesdays. And no, it's a way to cook. I get a lot of satisfaction that the way to cook is highly transferable. And I agree with coaches say you shouldn't copy other coaches. And that's not what I'm telling people to do. This is a way to think. This is a way to cook. Now, what you actually do in your practices, you do under these overarching principles, things like don't burn the steak, never let today ruin tomorrow, do less, achieve more, the disciplined pursuit of less, the Pareto principle, all those things. And then you get to do the recipe yourself. So you're not copying anybody. The reason why I go from town to town or podcast to podcast, kind of like an evangelical minister doing tent revivals, is, I'm out of control. But the reason why I do this is because the joy I get knowing that kids are better off.
Yeah.
That I'm doing something really good for kids. I mean, my boys had bad experiences in sports, and there's a lot of boys that do. And gosh, if coaches' boys are having bad experiences, I mean, guys that are going to be lifelong coaches did not have a good high school experience. And if I'm changing that for kids, that's a really good feeling. And then just as much, maybe more so, when I hear a coach tell me that his marriage was on the rocks and he was not a good father. And that when he started the disciplined pursuit of less, that his life changed and his priorities became balanced and his home life got better. And he started liking football more or track more or basketball more. That in a way, I'm kind of making people's lives better. I don't want to overstate that, but that's what, when I get a testimonial from somebody, and I get it often because I'm so published now and all that, but when I get somebody saying how wonderful the experience was in coaching, their kids had a great experience, how much their wife enjoyed the new guy that she was living with.
Yeah.
When I hear those things, it's like, yeah, I like to talk about this.
I think everybody as a coach intrinsically wants to be good. They want to do what's best, but I don't think sometimes they really know how to go about it. And I think you really hit on a good thing, which was you got to love what you do. But on top of that, you also have to be open-minded enough to understand there are two sides of the equation sometimes. Sometimes people just don't quite get to the point to where they're like, yeah, there is another viewpoint. There was a guy I used to coach with that he would say, we're at the fence. We're trying to pull you over, but you got to help us pull you over. We can't push you over this fence. You got to come over here and join us. My last question for you would be, when did you realize you were really on to something with this?
I think that when I went to the sprint-based track model, which doesn't sound weird at all, like, of course, sprint-based, that we're not going to have an endurance base. We're going to have a sprint base. We are going to focus on what matters, and that is how fast can we go. When I did that and I saw how competitive my kids were compared to other schools, they just kind of went out there and ran and didn't act like they liked it. My guys were like predators, man. They just went out and got after it, and they loved it. I tell my team often that I know they look for inspiration from me, but the great teams inspire their coach. You need to tell kids that a lot, that my coaching is often a reflection of you guys. If you guys come and inspire me, I'm going to be a better coach. And, it's a two-way street. So I think that started to happen where the kids that I coached, and, sometimes I wonder, was I just lucky to have great kids? And of course, I was lucky to have great kids, but I think their kids are great everywhere. I mean, you can have some bad years, but overall kids are fun to be around, especially when they love what they're doing. And so I think the inspiration that I got, the feedback I got from the kids, and winning is intoxicating as hell, state championships and gold medals. And, that's really, really cool stuff. And so it just feeds that fire. But I don't think I really understood that I was onto something until other coaches in other places started having success doing my stuff. I tell people that, my two sons, I don't know if they're a better track coach than I am now, but they will be. They will get much farther than I've ever got. And I think there are coaches out there who are feeding the cats that feed them better than I do. And, that's my legacy. That's like, I'm 61. Hell, I might be dead of COVID-19 in 3 weeks. Who knows? but if I am, there's still this cult of crazy coaches that put kids first, speed first, and, and have better lives because they're coaching a little bit differently than they were coached. And I think that's where I knew that, something good was going on.
I don't even have another question, to be honest with you. I just, it truly is what we tell our players, right? It's about building relationships. And you said it earlier.
Sure.
That coach doesn't want to come on and talk about offense or defense. he's talking about love and leadership and things like that. And I think oftentimes what coaches forget is you're not just creating a relationship with your player, you're creating a relationship with your other coaches, and you are continuing to develop and mold the relationship you have with your family at home, right? So if you're taking away from one of those, you're really kind of hurting all three of them, in my opinion. You
I agree.
can't, people always want to look for work-life balance, but I kind of say it's work-life harmony. Those three things are going to fit together where they need to. And if you're asking one of them to overly sacrifice so that somebody else can do something, you're probably not helping them. So I'll get off my soapbox about that. But I want to ask you one more question, and then we're going to finish this up, Coach. I really appreciate your time. Where does it go from here? What are the next steps? Where does it continue to evolve from with feeding the cats?
It's evolving now. Like I did a podcast yesterday with two guys from UMass, and we spent, I think, over an hour talking about programming for soccer and lacrosse. And I think my entire sports life concerning soccer and lacrosse is probably less than 5 minutes. I mean, but with my multi-sport background and with those like if you know how to cook in track, the cooking is kind of the same in all sports. We talked about letting the soccer game be the hardest thing you do during the week. Put more emphasis on speed than you do on endurance. That's kind of the exciting thing. Like in September, I did 5 workshops, 4 in England and 1 in Dublin, Ireland. And most of the coaches there were Gaelic football, soccer, and rugby. The whole thing about this way to cook, I don't know if it would work with swimming or not. I know swimming is a high volume sport. I don't understand swimming, but who knows? Maybe right. You know, maybe a sprint-based swimming program will become popular someday. It makes sense to me. If you're a sprinter, sure. And I mean, I don't know why you're doing 3 hours in the pool if you're trying to be a fast swimmer, but they do. I don't, something about gravity and buoyancy and whatever. But anyway, just getting to talk with, you know, football coaches like you, soccer programmers, I think that's the future. Then again, you know, with this crazy time we're living in, I don't know when will be the next time we have a group of coaches sitting in a room together. Our life might be doing, well, this isn't bad though.
No, I mean, too bad.
We've had fun, you know?
Yeah, we've had a good time.
Yeah. So who knows where it will go. And like I said before, you know, if it goes nowhere, there's people out there that are, you know, have new ideas, and that helps kids and helps coaches. So that's all good.
I totally agree with you. I think one of the things that this break is doing is resetting that work-life harmony for a lot of people. I think it's resetting it. It's allowing people to understand what their 20% really is and where to focus at that. I also think one thing that's doing for athletes is something you kind of touched on, and I'm going to define it using my own words. It's recreating the hunger that they have for the sport they play. Because too often in life, we don't know what we have until somebody takes it away, right?
Absolutely.
And right now, it's been taken away from a bunch of high school kids, college kids, youth kids. My 12-year-old is like, are we going to play baseball this summer? You know, so those things that they're just like, oh, mom and dad signed us up for, or it's another track season. It doesn't become just another. It becomes something they want. And you wrote a great article about it, 20,000 hours. And what do they really learn? They learn their cell phone and nobody ever taught them, right?
That's right.
It's because they love doing it. So I think this break resets us, takes us to the 20% if we identify it properly, and it teaches us why we love something and why we want it back. Coach, I got to get to the TFC. I got to get there. I want to come very badly. I talked to JR about that earlier this year. We were going to head down there. I had a work thing to do, but the next one, pencil us in. We're there. We're there.
That's awesome, man.
100%. We're there. We're probably going to have our headsets on and probably going to be doing like a live podcast right from the TFC.
That you can do that. I mean, we, one of the coolest things about the TFC is that when people come, it's not just like going to a clinic. For some reason, I don't know why, but people believe they belong to something. One of my favorite things that Chris Korfus said to me one time, he says, "You're one of us now." And I thought, holy cow, I'm one of the Chris Korfus group. And I know how good that made me feel. And
Sure.
I think that the people who come to us, I've never met a more giving, enthusiastic group of people that not only speak there, but attend the things. They want to be the type of coach that answers emails to other coaches. And, that's a really cool thing because, we're not always going to have winning seasons. We need that support group. Besides just our family, we need a support group of coaches that care about us, and a lot of coaches are at each other all the time, and they don't have to be that way. I think coaches' best friends should be coaches, and we do a good job with that, I think.
JR, I don't know when we're releasing this, but I think it's got to be like tomorrow.
Yeah.
It
needs to be quick.
This is amazing.
This
is
may
amazing
jump some
stuff.
people on our backlog here.
Yeah. Coach,
great.
professor, doctor, I don't even know what I should call you. There's got to be a degree for what you've done. I mean,
here's the deal. I have no letters after my name or before my name. I'm like the only teacher in the history of the world that taught 39 years without a master's degree. I mean, I have no credit at all. Like, all I am is just a teacher and a coach, but that doesn't mean you can't have good ideas. So
right.
It still works.
That's right. Well, the credit is in your athletes and their performance and what they ultimately inspire you with, right?
Yep.
So that's the credit. Oh man, amazing episode, JR. For Process Preparation Performance, we're out.